The Life of Chuck is a 2024 American film written and directed by Mike Flanagan and stars Tom Hiddleston, Jacob Tremblay, Benjamin Pajak, Chiwetel Ejiofor, and Mark Hamill. It's a stacked cast, obviously. Karen Gillan, Sara, Carl Lumbly. The plot follows the events of the life of Charles Krantz in three parts and in reverse chronological order. And it was taken from the 2020 Stephen King story of the same name, which I haven't read yet, but I really want to. Now, this was probably one of my most anticipated films of the last 2 or 3 years, not just of this year, but of the last several. I've been a Stephen King fan since forever, since almost as early as I can remember, and I have really become a fan of Mike Flanagan over the last few years. I don't want to say I was late to his work, but I kind of just perused it up until the last couple, like 3 or 4 years. I was just a casual fan, and now I'm kind of a diehard, I guess you could say. I mean, I'm just hooked on the way that he writes his characters and their dialogue. The heart, the realistic feel. I'm sure you've heard it all before. The long dramatized monologues that only he can write. I mean, I know it isn't for everyone. I've seen reviews, but it's definitely for me. It's for a lot of us, and I love that. Midnight Mass was, I think, my favorite show in recent years, in a long time, actually. A lot of Mike Flanagan's work is heavily Stephen King inspired. I mean, this is no secret. And this is the second actual adaptation that Flanagan has done so far. And I intentionally went into The Life of Chuck, pretty cold. I don't think I really knew anything about it other than what I saw in the trailer. And I knew going in that this was not going to be a horror film. It also seemed to be a very special film, to some of the people involved, some of the actors, Mike Flanagan himself. And I just couldn't wait to see it. I had to see what this was that these creators were just kind of, raving about isn't really the right word, but we'll just go with that. They were raving about it. I think I pretty much expected something of a I don't know. I expected something more of a straightforward, grounded story, and this ain't that, man. It's very weird. It's not really super cohesive, and I think that's okay. But I found it to be a little bit disjointed. It starts off with Act 3, titled Thanks, Chuck. And I'm confused right from the start, as is everybody that didn't know anything going in. So, by design. So, that's fine. I typically just assume that it's some super smart shit that's going over my head, and hopefully by the end I figure it out. So, yeah, you're good with The Life of Chuck. You just gotta kind of hang in there for a little bit. First of all, I'm thinking, where's Tom Hiddleston? He's on the cover, so I assume that he's probably the main character, and he sort of is. Anyway, he plays the adult version of the main character, I guess you could say. So I don't think he has like the most screen time or anything like that. So you don't really see him for a while. I think somewhat into the second act. You do see him popping up on billboards all over the place in this first act, though. And they're all the same billboard thanking him for 39 great years, they all say. So I assume, he's someone well-loved and someone important. But also, where did he work for 39 years? And why does he look to be in his 40s? Maybe, or did he start when he was 5? People take notice of the billboards and they're talking about them, but nobody seems to know who he is. And also the world is ending. Or at least that's what most people seem to assume, because everything in the world had been just going consistently wrong with no signs of anything being fixed or getting better. Just worldwide natural disasters and even the worldwide loss of the internet. Completely gone. One of my favorite scenes, though, involving this is where David Dastmalchian gives an emotional performance where he talks about, of all the things that he's recently lost, losing Pornhub was probably the one that hit him the hardest. And obviously that scene was very funny. If you haven't seen it, you can tell. But, it was a nice contrast to the general atmosphere of the entire first act, really, which is like a mix of somber and acceptance. And it kind of had me feeling in a way that I'm not sure I've really felt before, which was not good, but not really bad. Not necessarily happy and also, not sad, really. Or really all at the same time. I don't know. But if you like Mike Flanagan, I think this style is pretty effective. But this act really pretty much focuses on Chiwetel Ejiofor and Karen Gillan. And though I didn't really expect any of this was probably my favorite act of the three. I just kind of thought it was superior on all levels, but that's just my opinion or my personal taste, really. So you have Marty and Felicia, and they used to be married. And as it turns out, it kind of took the world ending to bring them back together. And this act is also about, Marty overcoming obstacles to get back to Felicia, so that they can spend their last moments on Earth together. And that really kind of sums up the vibe of like this entire film, more or less. It just feels so surreal, because rarely do we get stories that feel like this. I mean, I mentioned David Dastmalchian's great scene, but we also get one with Matthew Lillard, which I wouldn't really have expected to see here. He's kind of pushing the limits of like his acting capabilities, but he gives it his all, and I loved it for that. So yeah, even though I did feel like this act was a little bit jarring, but again, my favorite by far, and it feels to me the most Flanagan of the three. Now you meet the titular Chuck, played by Tom Hiddleston, an actor who has never really excited me as much of a professional as he is. But that said, I think I liked him here more than I've ever really seen him before. Not that it matters that much, because since this film covers the entirety of Chuck's life, Tom Hiddleston is hardly the lead of this film. So the act begins 9 months before Chuck's death. He, at the time, doesn't know yet that he's sick. And as he's like walking out of a work conference downtown in some city, he sees a busker drummer named Taylor, who I really liked, by the way. She makes her living by busking, and she even has a system where she can draw people's attention by playing certain beats depending on the vibe of the person. You don't really spend a ton of time with Taylor. She's actually only just in this act, but she's this free spirit and is always positive, even though she barely makes enough money to get by. So she sees Chuck and starts doing her thing, and it totally works. In fact, way better than she even expected. Because, man, Chuck just starts dancing, and then everyone like in this downtown area joins in, and they all dance together. And honestly, like, I hate dancing. It's not my thing at all, but it's a fucking cool scene. Again, just not really my thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. The dance choreography is super cool and super well done. It goes on actually for 5 minutes, or it might have been 5.5 minutes actually, which is a brave move for any movie that's not a fucking musical, I think. But most importantly, it would be a huge fail if I missed the point of the scene. Because it's ultimately not about dancing. It's about strangers coming together at random times and just being fucking happy together. And believe me, we need that right now. More than ever. I know you've heard me say that before, but... And here you also meet Janice, played by Annalise Basso, who had just been coldly dumped by her boyfriend, and, right when she needed something good to happen to her, it did. This entire act really is pretty much the light, happy part of the film, and please take the time, I think, to understand the message here. Your heart will thank you. Now we get to, like the life of Chuck. This mysterious man that we, still really don't know much about, if anything, starting from the beginning of his entire life. That said, I had even more mixed feelings about this third act, and I have to say that it loses me several times throughout it, even though it goes back to, kind of flirting with the supernatural weirdness, like from the first act, which I should like. You have Benjamin Pajak and Jacob Tremblay, both playing young Chuck, and they're both really, really good. You also get a very charming performance from Mark Hamill as Albie, Chuck's grandfather, and I think that it was a great... I really think it was a great performance. He was just so good, and he gets a decent amount of screen time in this act as well. And like I said, you get the supernatural weirdness starts to come back in a different way, and it does kind of connect to the first act. But I just again, I just think it probably worked better in written form, because I mean, conceptually it's super cool, but to me it felt like I said earlier, it felt disjointed almost like it didn't really fit together, and it just, for me, it was distracting. Overall, I think this whole act is about Chuck having to overcome some serious obstacles pretty much his entire life, and how he found the strength to not only overcome all these obstacles, but be an inspiration to others. And he didn't just do it all by himself, he did it with the help and compassion of his community, very Mike Flanagan. So I'm giving The Life of Chuck a 7 out of 10. It's ambitious as hell, and it mostly delivers. But for me, it's just a little bit too uneven. If the first act was extended to 90 minutes and you cut out the other 2 acts, I think I would have liked it a lot more. It hinges on the writing, of course, but also the performances and characters. Even though we've seen, a lot better in Flanagan projects, just my opinion. Cheers, guys, and I'll see you at the multiplex.